The most recent Famitsu sales in Japan give us a very clear picture, in my opinion, about what's going to be happening and how huge this is going to be for the Nintendo Switch 2. And I have a little bit of a theory tying it into a major game that we really haven't heard anything about that has a strong history with Nintendo. But before we get into all that, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch and RPG videos first. And also make sure you subscribe because we are giving away a special collector's edition of Metaphor ReFantazio. I'm saying it correctly now. ReFantazio on the PlayStation 5. So you definitely want to hit the subscribe button, notifications, comment below, because we will be giving that away very soon. Now let's go ahead and jump right into the most recent numbers and what I think this is going to mean, because I do feel that there is a lot of significance in this, and some of the stuff that I've been hearing behind the scenes when it comes to some of the developers and games that are coming are tying into what is happening. So the most recent Famitsu sales in Japan were released today, and it showed that the PlayStation 5 has essentially bottomed out after the price hike. Only 8,757 units for the system when it was selling around 30 to 40K sometimes just a couple of weeks ago. So that high price, in addition to lack of software from Sony themselves that appeals directly to the Japanese audience on a regular basis, has essentially Wii-U'd the sales in Japan. Definitely not good. On the flip side, you have the Nintendo Switch that sold 52,355 units, which for a system in its 8th year at this point, or going into it, that is absolutely crazy. I have never seen a system when it comes to the Famitsu or sales charts sell this good this late into its life. It's very difficult to do so. I know the 3DS was kind of close there at times, but not quite like this, especially from a software perspective, having 9 out of the top 10 titles, with many of them being Nintendo Switch first-party games: Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Animal Crossing, Ring Fit Adventure, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So definitely impressive when it comes to the longevity of the system. But how does that tie into what's going to be happening with the Nintendo Switch 2? Well, there's a number of different things. I've spoke about some before, but I have a new theory, or I have another theory that I wanted to kind of go into detail with, and I think it ties into Dragon Quest 12. Now, I've talked about this before, but I feel that the reason why we're not seeing Dragon Quest 12 as much, because I do feel that it's going to be an opening, or it's going to be a, hey, we have this game on this new hardware with the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I still feel that it's going to be a multi-platform release. I think it's going to be on PC at some point. I think it's going to be obviously on PlayStation 5 or maybe even PlayStation 4. Overall, I think that they could even make a standard Nintendo Switch 1 version of the game. You have to remember with Dragon Quest 11, they made a Nintendo 3DS version of the game and sold over 1 million copies in Japan alone of that 3DS version. In addition to the PlayStation 4 version, then they made a separate Nintendo Switch version, which was Dragon Quest 11S, that was built specifically for the system and was not a port of the PlayStation 4 version of the game. And then that version of the game ultimately ended up getting ported to the PlayStation 5, in addition to the PlayStation 4, Xbox Series, and PC as well. So it's very interesting that that was the lead platform going forward with them. I think they're going to go ahead and nip that one from the start at the beginning with Dragon Quest 12. I feel that they are waiting because they know, look at the dynamics here. Square Enix and all these Japanese companies have more data than what we even see here. We see this data that they show up from the Famitsu, but they have all the other data. They have the data that definitely we don't have access to when it comes to more of the intricate sales and what's going on in Japan. And I think that they are looking at it like, hey, if we really want to make a splash, we need to make sure that we have this game on the Nintendo Switch 2 at the beginning, because look at what's happening in Japan. Nintendo Switch software is still selling incredibly well. The hardware is absolutely dominating, despite it being older than the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series, of course. So if you look at Dragon Quest, that's always been a Japan first type of franchise. Now, I think they might do a worldwide release for this next one coming up with Dragon Quest 12, but they still think about how many copies we can sell in Japan first. And that's the most important thing. That's the key point in what I'm talking about here. It's a Japan first franchise. So they're going to make sure that they go with something that's going to get them the best absolute results in Japan, which is exactly why they made a Nintendo 3DS version of an 8th generation game. They said, hey, we've got to have this on here too, because we know that the Nintendo 3DS is going to be able to sell a lot of copies. And they didn't even localize that Nintendo 3DS version. They just shoved it, I guess, into the Nintendo Switch version of the game and the newer versions of it with Dragon Quest XI's, although obviously you don't get those models that were made, the 3D models that were made for the Nintendo 3DS game. But either way, you see what they're willing to do in order to put Japan first with the sales, and that's how Dragon Quest has always been. It's a massive franchise. It doesn't necessarily even need the rest of the world to be ultra successful, but obviously they've been able to expand, and Dragon Quest XI's did incredible when it comes to worldwide sales. But if you're looking at the dynamics from when they launched Dragon Quest XI's to now at this point, obviously PlayStation has lost a lot of its relevance in Japan, because back then they still had PlayStation 4 titles, they still had a few things, even PS3, sometimes Vita titles kind of sneak in there. In 2017 or so, things were a bit different. That was before the Nintendo Switch really hit the ground running overall. So I do feel that Dragon Quest XII is going to be a game that launches very close to the Nintendo Switch 2 launch, and they're going to be using that. And if they do, if my theory turns out to be correct, that is going to be absolutely massive for the Nintendo Switch 2. And honestly, it's going to guarantee that everything is going to do very well when it comes to the sales and when it comes to the system and all of that. Now, the thing that I also want to point out here is that we're still getting quite a bit of support from Japanese developers on Nintendo Switch 1. There have been various different games like The Legend of Heroes, Trails in the Sky, the remake. You also have the new Atelier Yumiya game and other titles that are still coming over, new games that are coming over to the Nintendo Switch 1. So they're still making sure that their engines and what they do might be the crustier version or a crusty version of the game, but they're at least trying to make sure that, hey, we're going to have this on the Nintendo Switch 1, because they know that's where they're going to be able to get the sales. I know the Reinatis developer even said that himself when it came to what they wanted to do with the game. They said, hey, we kind of have to go with what we think was going to be able to sell the most, which was the Nintendo Switch, which is something that I've been talking about for a while when it comes to the Japanese landscape of it. I think I've been discussing this since, I don't know, since the Nintendo Switch 1 came out and I started to see what was happening in the Famitsu sales. It was kind of sketchy on what was going to do the best at that time, but now we have a very clear picture on what is happening based off of the Famitsu sales, based off of what we've been analyzing for the last 7-8 years now at this point. So I do feel that these Japanese developers are absolutely going to make sure that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a success. With the Nintendo Switch, they weren't necessarily making sure it was a success. They were kind of waiting and looking back with some support here and there, kind of testing the waters, but they weren't really trying to go all in on the system. They didn't know if it was going to be a success. Many Japanese developers even admitted this. Many publishers admitted this. So I do feel that with this system, they really can't afford for it to not be a success, considering how expensive the PlayStation 5 is and how people just aren't really buying it like that in Japan. You have to make sure that you have some system that is going to be leading for the economy and for jobs and everything. So I think that they're going to make sure that the Nintendo Switch 2 does well with a lot of support. I think we could see so much support when it comes down to it. It's going to make the Nintendo Switch first year look like absolutely nothing in comparison with third-party developers. Even though the Switch first year was okay, we had some big Western games here and there. We had Resident Evil ports. We had a few things. It was not terrible, definitely better than what the Wii U got, but at the same time, it was still a little bit held back. It was a little bit reserved overall. I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be completely different when it comes down to it, based off of what we've been hearing so far, based off of their support with the Switch 1 heading into the Switch 2. It seems like it's going to be a nice, smooth transition, which Nintendo has never really had. I mean, maybe with some of their portables back in the day, but even with the Nintendo DS, that was still a little bit of a rough sled kind of getting going with the dual screens and getting people moving over from GBA to the Nintendo DS. Even from DS to 3DS, there were some issues with third party there as well, in addition to Nintendo first party, which took them a bit more time. So I think that this will probably be the smoothest transition that Nintendo's had from one system to another. And I think that Nintendo's going to be incredibly confident with what they're doing going forward with this new system. And I think that's why they're taking so much time, because they want to make sure that everything is set up and set up to be successful. That's the biggest thing, not just set up normally. The Wii U and 3DS were set up, but they want to make sure that everything is set up for success and long-term success overall. So I do see Nintendo supporting this system with a lot of first-party games, features, and other things to make it essentially the best possible Nintendo Switch iteration that they could do. Now, I think that the marketing, obviously, of this new system coming up needs to be on point. The third-party developers are really counting on that, making sure that that is solid as well. But when do you think that we could see this new system, the Nintendo Switch 2? I get that question so many times on my live streams, and I'm always like, I don't know, I'm not sure, maybe it's going to be this, but I think I can give an answer here overall. Then of course reference this video whenever anybody asks me on my live streams or any other point. I do think that it's possible. There are theories, it's possible that Nintendo waits till after the holidays to announce this system. Maybe they say, hey, look, we'll just do it in January. Maybe we'll have our big presentation in January and then we'll launch it in May. They could absolutely do that, or launch it in April. That is 100% a possibility. Although we're starting to get a number of leaks from this system. We're starting to see production line type of leaks, and we've had analysis from various different people when it comes to the tech space, and all of it seems to be the consensus that those leaks are correct. So if we go at this rate overall, the whole thing might be leaked before Nintendo even gets a chance to announce the system. So I think that Nintendo probably wants to get in front of that, and I think that they already have something planned. Maybe just a short video talking about the system. It could be like the Nintendo Switch first look, that video that we did get. We got that in October of 2016. Many are predicting that we get that again in October of this year, and I think that is also possible. I would say it's 50-50 at this point, maybe a bit higher, that we do see the Nintendo Switch 2, or at least Nintendo says something about the system in October. I think by November, it's kind of like whatever, you might as well just wait till January or whenever you want to. But I'm guessing that something will be said about this system, the Nintendo Switch 2, officially from Nintendo in November. Now, we didn't get that massive Nintendo Direct in September that we usually get. We did get the September Directs from third party and the indie showcase. We got that pushed up. So many people felt like, oh, okay, since that was in August, they're clearing out the rest of the slate, so then we can get an announcement for this year at some point. So I'm still of the opinion that that's what's going to happen. I do think that it's going to be an October announcement, but once again, I'm kind of 50-50, maybe a bit more on it. I'm not exactly sure what Nintendo's going to have planned. Obviously, they've just said, hey, look, we're going to announce it at some point between March of this year and March of next year. So they're going to have something more on it at that point. So we just don't know exactly when, but I'm still more leaning towards that it's going to be announced in October. Tokyo Game Show is taking place. Obviously, third-party developers are there with Nintendo Switch 2 games that they can't say anything about. Nintendo's definitely there doing business, because the business for Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be booming in Japan when it does launch in 2025. So I do feel that Nintendo is gearing up something, but I'm guessing that they want the right tone, they want the right style, they want everything to be set up perfectly, because they do not have a fallback system like they've had in the past if something doesn't go well, like with the GameCube and the GBA. You also have the Wii U, the 3DS. 3DS did better, so they don't have that anymore. So you have to make sure that everything is set. But I think that with Nintendo's big first-party titles and with third-party Japanese devs actually being confident in the system, I think that's going to completely change the trajectory of how Nintendo launches their systems, what games they're going to have available within the first years. It's going to be so much better for the fans going forward, because look at what we got on the Nintendo Switch as proof. So what do you guys think overall about everything here that I talked about with my theory on Dragon Quest XII, also the Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch and RPG videos right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.